Living with arthritis is very, very difficult. As both a patient and a rheumatologist, I know firsthand just how painful and difficult it is to live with these conditions. There are many ways to heal arthritis beyond just medications. So today, I'm going to be talking about natural strategies that you can use to help fight these painful conditions. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I am Dr. Micah Yu, board certified integrative rheumatologist and an arthritis patient as well. Thank you so much to all of you who watched my video on my story on how I was able to beat arthritis naturally. This is a follow-up video on how you can do it too with different strategies that we're going to talk about in today's video. Because of my own journey, it is my mission to educate everyone living with these horrible conditions to learn how to fight them alongside with the guidance of their doctor. I thought my disease was a curse, but now I see it as a blessing. Because of my suffering, I hope I can educate you on how to lead a better, pain-free life. Some of you may have a goal of being one day pain-free. Others may want a year pain-free or longer. There is no one way of treating arthritis, and there is no perfect formula for this. Everyone will have their own formula. But I do want to talk about the important steps that you can take to naturally beat arthritis. While it's important to try to beat arthritis naturally, it is important that we do not ignore medications when it's recommended from our doctors. While a plant-based diet did help me in beating my own arthritis, I do realize that every individual may have different diets that work for them. I'm not here to tell you specifically what to eat today, but I'm here to give you the evidence so that you can make your own decision. I have seen many of your comments on my other video on my story on arthritis. And one thing I did notice is that all of you had a different diet that worked for you. Some of you are just like me. A whole food plant-based diet helped your arthritis. Others have commented that a paleo diet or autoimmune protocol diet helped them, while others did say that a carnivore diet helped them as well. I believe all of you, and I do applaud you for your efforts in healing your own arthritis. That is something that's not easy at all. There is scientific data behind diet and arthritis. However, the research is still very new and much more needs to come forward. Why does one patient flare on something that's very healthy while another patient can get healed by it? Those are all questions that still need to be answered. So what I will present to you today is based on the best scientific evidence thus far. What we want to do when we are trying to reverse arthritis and autoimmune conditions is to stop chronic inflammation. Not all inflammation is bad. Acute inflammation is an important and basic physiologic process. And we need it to heal wounds. We need it to fight viruses, bacteria, and funguses and parasites as well. As you can see, we do need inflammation in our body, but what we do not want is chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is inflammation that is causing a lot of our long-term chronic conditions in society these days, including arthritis. Chronic inflammation is a result of many different factors that we will talk about in this video. Reversing arthritis may be easy for some of you, and others it may be very hard. Some of you may be able to just change your diet and your arthritis can get better, and that was my case. While others may need to take a more comprehensive approach other than diet alone, and that's okay. And some of you may still need medications, and that's okay as well. Medications are not evil. It's okay to be on medications. So with that said, let's talk about the different factors and strategies that we can use to beat arthritis naturally. Point number one is finding a diet that works for you. There are a lot of diets out there that can help with arthritis and autoimmune diseases. Most of the scientific evidence at this time does point towards a Mediterranean diet. Even the American College of Rheumatology in their integrative medicine guidelines for rheumatoid arthritis says that Mediterranean diet is the one that they support for arthritic conditions. However, for me, a whole food plant-based diet did help heal my own arthritis. And there's a lot of scientific evidence out there that plant predominant diets do help with arthritis overall. Some of you may need a whole food plant-based diet. However, there are some patients that do get better with the autoimmune protocol diet as well. And there's also scientific evidence for that. And what an autoimmune protocol diet is a paleo diet. So this type of diet eliminates grains, nuts, seeds, and nightshade vegetables along with ultra processed food, which I'll talk about in just a bit. So what does the Mediterranean diet, whole food plant-based diet, and the autoimmune protocol diet have in common? Well, they eliminate ultra processed foods and they do emphasize fruits and vegetables in these diets. Studies have shown that fruit and vegetable intake is associated with lower mortality, which is one of the reasons why I like these foods so much. In addition, fruits and vegetables have a lot of fiber and also polyphenols. And polyphenols are the nutrients found in the different colors of the rainbow of these different foods. Both fiber and polyphenols are really important for your immune system and also for gut health as well. There are multiple studies that have shown that higher fiber intake is associated with lower inflammation. Another reason why I'm such a big fan of fiber and polyphenols is because it helps lower inflammation, but also it helps with the gut health as well. Fiber is really important in building up the gut microbiome. Although the science for lectins and nightshades is very weak at this time, some patients do react and flare to these foods. And foods that contain lectin include beans, lentils, chickpea, and also the nightshades also include tomatoes, eggplants, bell peppers, and these foods are very healthy in general. However, in certain individuals, it can cause reactions. So I am not in agreement with Dr. Gundry, the doctor that popularized the anti-lectin diet, because I've seen patients that do very well on lectins, such as beans, and I've seen patients that do well on nightshades as well. And I personally do not flare on these foods either. That's why I'm a big proponent that these foods should not be eliminated, especially if there are no reactions or flares under these circumstances. And I know some of you are like, why is he talking about the keto diet or carnivore diet? Well, I know some of you have done these diets and have done very, very well with them, with your arthritis or autoimmune condition. And I believe you and I applaud you for that. However, the scientific evidence isn't too strong with these types of diets right now. I'm still waiting for the research to come out, and it probably would in the future. But right now, the scientific evidence is strongest with plant predominant diets. And one of the reasons why we can't have one diet that fits all autoimmune patients is because all our gut microbiomes are different. Not only that, a lot of us with arthritis and autoimmune conditions have something called gut dysbiosis. And that means our gut is out of balance. Our good gut bugs are outweighed by our bad gut bugs. And when we have gut dysbiosis, we may be reacting to foods that are very, very healthy to us that we normally should not react to. So for example, some patients may be reacting to bell peppers or even onions or even lettuce. And these foods are very healthy. In normal circumstances, there will be no reaction. But because the gut is leaky and it's dysbiosed, then the patient could react to healthy foods. That's why you see so many patients have to customize their diets, or they can't eat certain foods when it's super healthy. And this is the reason why. Because the foods that we are eating sometimes interacts with our immune system when it shouldn't, in a very detrimental way, causing flares and inflammatory processes. I think the carnivore diet can work in certain individuals because some patients, their gut is so dysbiosed that they are reacting to all these healthy plants and fruits and vegetables that they are eating these meats to avoid those foods. And not only that, but they can react to grains and beans and all these other foods that normally can be very healthy. So that's one of the reasons why the carnivore diet works in certain individuals. However, for me, a plant-based diet worked. So in summary, the foods that we should try to emphasize are the fruits and vegetables because it contains fiber and phytonutrients or polyphenols. And there's a lot of research studies on this. and you may be taking supplements that contain these phytonutrients or polyphenols such as curcumin and turmeric, resveratrol and grapes, lycopene from tomatoes. Foods that we should absolutely be avoiding are high salt foods. There's data to show that high salt fights against the very medications we use in rheumatology to lower inflammation. We should minimize ultra processed foods. We should minimize or eliminate refined sugar, which can be very inflammatory. It can cause a glucose spike in the body, which causes some acute inflammation. Processed meats can also be very inflammatory as well, which includes hot dogs, salami, pepperoni, ham. These foods can be very inflammatory as well. And we can't forget seed oils. So vegetable oil, canola oil, these foods are high in omega-6 and it can also be inflammatory. And don't forget palm oil. So my favorite oil, if I had to choose one, would be extra olive virgin oil. Now don't forget, it has a low smoke point. You cannot cook at a high temperature with this oil. And finally, dairy is another food group that I try to avoid and I recommend my patients avoid to minimize inflammation and flares. Now the science behind dairy and inflammation is not concrete at this time, but I've noticed that in my patients, certain patients will flare on dairy. But on the topic of dairy yogurt, there's data to show that it does help the gut microbiome with probiotics. That's a safer dairy product to take if we had to choose one. So overall, an anti-inflammatory diet can be very useful. There's no one size fits all, but I do recommend a plant predominant diet if we do have to choose one diet with the most scientific evidence. Point number 2 is stress. Yes, we all will have stress. However, what we can control is our reaction to stress. We can shift our mindset and change our viewpoint in things that happen to us in life. There are coping techniques and mechanisms that we can use to minimize our stress levels and help our reaction to stress, such as meditation, therapy, tai chi, mindfulness. So there are different techniques out there that we can find that we can really use to minimize stress and thus lower inflammation as well. There's actually a new field called psychoneuroimmunology, which ties in the brain to our nervous system and our immune system. And that is how we know that stressors, chronic stress, can create more inflammation in the body. Don't forget, on top of meditation, yoga and massage therapy can also help with inflammation and stress levels. I will add that if there are very stressful people in your life and you can't avoid them, try to minimize your exposure to them because it can only create more problems with autoimmune conditions and inflammation. And if we can't avoid individuals, then try to change your reaction to the stress levels. There is a lot of scientific evidence that's coming out with mind-body medicine and inflammation and autoimmune disease and arthritis. So please focus on the mind-body medicine piece. It's as important as the food component and don't underestimate it. In the past, when I flared a lot, I had more stress during those times. So please be aware of that. Number 3, addressing trauma. Trauma is a huge factor when it comes to chronic inflammation. We have a lot of traumatic events that happen throughout our life. These can include parents divorcing, divorce in our lives, bullying at school, or even physical and emotional abuse that happen in our childhood and when we're adults. And when these events happen when we're kids, that's called adverse childhood event, also an ACE. And studies have shown when there's adverse childhood events and can lead to a higher risk of autoimmune diseases and chronic inflammation. When we have traumatic events that happen in our life, such as a car accident as well, that can sometimes incite an autoimmune reaction also. So don't underestimate these traumas that happen in our lives. One way to try to heal from these processes is to get a therapist. That's one of the ways that we can heal from this, is talking to someone, using some techniques that they have been trained to use to help heal from these events. I don't have any medications or supplements to fix these traumatic events. Only therapy can do that, or finding solace in religion and prayer, something that can help heal us. Number 4 is exercise. Movement is medicine. Exercise is medicine. Exercise can be in so many different forms. When I used to think of exercise when I was younger, I was like, I need to run an ultra marathon. I need to do all these extreme things. That's exercise. But that is not it. Those extreme forms of exercise can sometimes cause more inflammation. What we do want to focus on is any type of movement, depending on where you are in your stage of your health. Some patients, their goal is to just get out of bed. When that is the case, then maybe stretching can be a form of exercise. Tai Chi, chair yoga. For others, it could be weightlifting, resistance exercises, running, plyometrics, something a little bit more intense. What the government does recommend is 150 minutes of moderate intensive exercise per week. That's about 2.5 hours. For me personally, I do a little bit more intense exercises a couple times a week, which include plyometrics, which is like jumping on boxes. I do some running, I do some weightlifting as well. But I'm at a different point in my health journey. Before, I couldn't do so many of those things because I would flare all the time. Everyone's a little bit different, so my main message to you with exercise is medicine is just to move. And if you can find a community to move with, that would be excellent. Another reason why exercise is so important is to maintain weight. But not only that, there is a cell in our body called adipocytes, which are fat cells. We all have that. But when it's in abundance, it can cause more chronic inflammation through this exact process. There is something called adipokines that can produce from adipocytes, the fat cells. And these adipokines are hormonally active and immunologically active as well. So not only can it disrupt our hormonal system, but it can disrupt our immune system, thus promoting more inflammation, which is why movement is key here. So do not ignore movement as medicine. It's just as important as stress relief and eating correctly. Avoiding alcohol and stop smoking. That's point number 5. These substances, while they can be fun for certain individuals, it can promote more inflammation. Alcohol, I mean, sure, we can have it once in a while, but it does disrupt the gut microbiome and can promote more inflammation. And also for smoking, we know that, for example, in rheumatoid arthritis, smoking can generate more CCP antibodies, thus promoting the increased risk of RA. And studies have shown that it can contribute to other autoimmune diseases as well. So the only answer to that is to stop smoking or minimize the amount you smoke and working with someone that can help take you off those substances. Point number 6 is sleep. Sleep deprivation can potentially make you feel worse. Have you ever noticed that when you don't sleep as much, or you have trouble falling asleep, or you have broken sleep throughout the night, the next day you're in more pain, you have more stiffness, you feel groggy, you have more brain fog and more fatigue? Well, that's because sleep is very healing. When we don't sleep as much, it can produce more chronic inflammation. That's what we don't want. And there's a number of different things we can do to get better quality of sleep. Certainly we can go to a therapist or sleep specialist to get through this. However, there's things we can do at home, such as turning off the lights in the room, not looking at the TV screen or our iPad or our phone, because that disrupts our circadian rhythm. Also, we can maybe calm our mind down, meditate, pray, do something with our religion before sleep to calm the mind down. There's even apps now that help with guided imagery to help people like you and I sleep. So don't underestimate the power of sleep because it's so important for healing and our immune system. Number 7 is my favorite topic, and that is environmental toxins. My message for you in this section is to minimize environmental toxins, and this is a field of environmental medicine. There is environmental toxins that we're insulted every day in society. That's pollution, plastics, pesticides, and these environmental toxins can contribute to chronic inflammation. We have studies that show that when there's increased exposure to pesticides or pollution, there is an increased risk of getting autoimmune disease such as lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, even multiple sclerosis as well. Plastics contain substances such as BPA, PCBs, and also forever chemicals. And what we do know based on scientific evidence is that these chemicals can disrupt our hormone system in our immune system as well. When it disrupts our hormonal system, that's called endocrine disruptors. And that's not just only coming from me, that's coming from the Endocrine Society as well. Even the New England Journal of Medicine talked about microplastics being found in arteries of patients. These microplastics in the arteries were associated with higher risk of death, heart attacks, and strokes. So in my own life, with my family, we try to minimize plastics because we want to minimize our risk to these problems. And studies have shown already, like I said earlier, that there is an increased association with autoimmune problems. So it's not just food or sleep or these things, but it's also associated with the environment as well. We're barely scraping the surface of research on these environmental toxins and what it can do to our body. I think in the next 10, 20, 30 years, we'll get more clarifications, but in the meantime, what we do know that they are immune disruptive and hormonally disruptive. And they can also disrupt our gut health as well. And finally, number 8 is the gut microbiome. Everything we've talked about so far impacts the gut microbiome. Usually when we think about the gut microbiome, we think about food only, but it's way beyond food. Food affects the gut microbiome, but so does your stress levels, your environmental toxins exposure, how much you sleep. If you're using alcohol and smoking, that affects it as well. So all these things can affect the gut microbiome, and so can exercise, surprisingly, right? No one thinks about the exercise and the gut, but it also affects the gut microbiome as well. And what we do know is the gut microbiome is compromised in all types of autoimmune diseases. When we think of the joints and other organs, we're like, how does it relate to the gut microbiome? But it truly does relate. Western medicine is only finally catching up now, but in ancient cultures and other practices, food has been a key ingredient to health, including Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine. And these gut imbalances can lead to different food sensitivities. Remember how I said earlier that not every patient will react the same way to one diet? Well, that's because of gut dysbiosis and gut imbalance. It can cause patients to react to different foods in different ways. So don't underestimate the power of these different factors that we've talked about in relating to the gut microbiome. And we can't forget our sense of community. So when we have these conditions, it's important that we find people that we can relate to so that we don't feel as lonely. And also, overall well-being, it's important to find a sense of community, whether that's your friends, family, or your religion. That's also very important. And just because we address all these factors that I've talked about doesn't mean that you can automatically beat arthritis. Some of us may need medications, others may not. But don't forget medications, especially if your doctor is really pushing for it. That's a discussion that you need to have with their own clinical team. All these factors, if done properly, can still cause flares and reactions. It's because it can be beyond this. Some of us have encountered an infection, a virus, or bacteria, or parasite that's causing chronic inflammation. Or some have encountered a tick-borne illness such as Lyme, Bartonella, Babesia, that has triggered the autoimmune process as well. So if we don't take care of some of these problems, it can be hard to heal naturally. And other factors to think about as well is environmental toxins. We mentioned that earlier. But one environmental insult is heavy metals. Sometimes high heavy metal exposure can cause more inflammation. So if we don't address that, ever look at it, it can cause more pain and inflammation. So I think of mercury, I think of high lead, and other environmental toxins and heavy metals. And we also have to think about our hormones and how's our metabolism doing. So those are just some basic things I think about. And let's not forget about mold and mycotoxins. If we're exposed to mold, sometimes that can be a trigger of autoimmunity. And there's one article in a rheumatology journal back in the early 2000s that did talk about mold exposure and autoimmune rheumatic diseases. So I want to hear from you. What have you learned from this video? What are you doing to help yourself? And not only that, what else do you have to add to this? I may have left some things out in this video, and I want to hear from you. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with as well? I am here to give you the most up-to-date scientific evidence on this information on integrative health and autoimmune diseases. And if you enjoyed this video and you got something out of it, I would truly appreciate it if you can comment below, like this video, and also subscribe to my channel where I try to publish weekly videos. And if you want to learn more about integrative medicine, you can watch this next video.